What's up, everybody? Today you get to join me as I attempt to make this Tacoma engine bay look as nice as the engine bay on my 4Runner. As you can see, it's pretty beat up, and the 4Runner, of course, it's no spring chicken either, but it's been pretty well cared for most of its life, and so it doesn't look perfect by any means, but it looks pretty decent in there. The Tacoma, though, however, I mean, it's got 340,000 kilometers on it, and as far as I know, this thing has never had its engine detailed, so it's pretty bad. We've got a lot of caked on dirt and grime, and we also have like a sprayed on undercoating product on here that's basically turned into black spray paint. So I am trying to manage my expectations here. I really don't think that there's much we can do to improve this, so let's find out. The products that I'm using for this, it's pretty straightforward. I'm using my wheel brushes that I normally use in my wheel bucket. I've got 3 different sizes. I've got a big one, and then a long skinny one, and a small one just for scrubbing like little details and stuff. For the most part, I'm going to be using Meguiar's Super Degreaser, and I think this is diluted 4:1 last time I mixed it up, which is the stronger ratio. And I've also got a wheel cleaner here just to see what I can do to knock that undercoating down a little bit. I needed something a little bit stronger. Again, I don't really have high hopes, and I also just have a water-based tire dressing. This is Poor Boy's Bold and Bright, but you can use like hyper dressing, or there's a lot of popular ones out there. Now, before we get started, I definitely recommend grabbing all of the loose leaves and keys and needles and stuff that get trapped in the wiper cowl here, just because as soon as you get those wet, that crap turns into like mud and gunk, and it's impossible to get rid of. So grab them out of there while they're dry still. It'll make your life a little easier. So I'm just going to throw my brushes into my soapy bucket of water here. This is just regular car soap, nothing special. And because I'm spraying the engine bay, I am going to cover up the alternator with a towel here, I don't want to get water inside the alternator. It's a little bit exposed on this engine. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about getting your engine wet. There's a common misconception of people that think that you just cannot spray water on your engine bay, and it's ridiculous. In this case, I am going to cover up the battery and the fuse box. Honestly, it's just because I know there's going to be people in the comment section screaming and crying saying, you gotta disconnect the battery. Like, whatever, it's fine. This stuff is meant to withstand the elements and weather, and you don't have to worry about that too much. On the 4Runner, honestly, I don't cover anything up. I just spray it down, no big deal, never had a problem. But in this case, if you are worried about that kind of stuff, feel free to just take a second to cover up some of the electrical components. And aside from that, the goal is you want to be smart about using a pressure washer on your engine bay. 2 things to keep in mind. Number 1, you never want to directly spray anything electronic, especially any exposed wiring or connectors. Just don't spray directly at it. And number 2, keep a little bit of distance. You don't want to hold 1,000 psi of water pressure directly on your battery or something like that, or even on your belts and stuff. Like, they're just going to squeal after, and you don't need to do that. Keep a little bit of distance and you'll be fine. So I'm starting from the top down, obviously, here, because I don't want to have the engine bay nice and clean and then start cleaning all the grime off of the inside of the hood and have it all fall down onto the clean engine. So you start from the top, work your way down. The inside of this hood, again, we got to manage our expectations here. This paint is very badly stained. It's got some rust showing through. And it also has some of the undercoating sprayed on it too. So I'm just seeing what I can do, and I'm trying to knock down some of the loose dirt, whatever is able to be pulled off there fairly easily. And then we're going to end up moving on to the rest of the engine bay and just kind of cut our losses. Now, as you can see here, the degreaser clearly is not getting us very far, so I am going to do one more attempt with the wheel cleaner and just see if that's powerful enough to break some more of this stuff down. But again, I think I've finally met my match here. I've never seen an engine bay that I haven't been able to make look pretty good. But man, this truck just fights me on every single thing. It's just been so neglected for so long that I'm not a miracle worker. I'm going to clean it up as best as I can. And as expected, the hood still doesn't look that great. Not much that we could do there. I mean, the silver paint is a little bit cleaner, but I think we'll call that a loss on that one. And let's move on to the actual engine bay now. As you can see, I am using a pressure washer on my engine bay, and you do not have to be afraid to do this as long as you're smart about it. If you are afraid of using a pressure washer, you can just use a garden hose or something, and something low pressure. But the moral of the story here is that it is okay to get your engine wet. I mean, all of the connections, all of the electronics and everything on a vehicle like this, they're all meant to be weatherproof. So while I still would definitely not hold the pressure washer directly at a wiring connector or something, you don't have to worry about it. These things are meant to withstand all kinds of weather. And another thing to keep in mind is that your engine bay, even though it has a hood that closes over it, is not sealed up from the weather. So there's a reason why this engine is so dirty in the first place. It's got so much dirt and grime and just like that road grime from driving in the rain. It's all getting in there. So the fact that your engine can get dirty in the first place tells you that it's also exposed to water and snow and road salt and dirt and grime. Everything is getting into the engine bay. Yeah, the fact that the hood closes certainly helps, but manufacturers do engineer these engine bays to be weatherproof. If an engine bay was like a fully sealed unit, then every time you pop your hood, it would still look brand new in there. And as you can see, that's definitely not the case. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of working my way through the engine bay. I like to kind of split it in half and do one side at a time. The main reason for that is just there's a lot of areas to touch on, and I don't want things to dry, especially if I have any kind of cleaners on there. I don't want things to dry while I'm working on a different section, so I split it up at least in half. Sometimes I'll kind of split it up into quadrants and just do 4 individual sections. You can kind of use your own judgment for that, but I'm just going through and I'm using the long skinny brush to dig down into the tighter spots, and then I'll switch over to the bigger brush for kind of the flatter sections to give them a good scrubbing. But man, whoever sprayed this undercoating product on here, first of all, they did a real sloppy job. They got it on, as you can see, like the washer fluid reservoir, like the clear plastic, it's got overspray of this stuff on it. They just hose this thing down. And honestly, it doesn't do a very good job. So you can see all of the contaminants and the dirt and the grime and obviously the road salt and stuff like that is all stuck onto the inner fenders. And if the idea is to keep things from rusting, you don't want to be attracting contaminants that can cause rust. So that's why I'm against these like spray-on rust prevention products. I think they do more harm than good. This kind of stuff, it's just after a few years or even a decade or two, it's just turned into essentially like spray paint. And in my opinion, the only way to get this engine bay looking proper and getting all this old rust proofing off is with some kind of dry ice cleaning. You got to really hit this hard with the proper tools and the proper products in order to get that off. And to me, that would be such an expensive process that this truck just doesn't warrant that. The next thing is you want to make sure that you're drying it off and you're blowing any standing water out of there. Any cracks and crevices that it could be pooling up. You want to try and get this engine bay as dry as possible before you start driving it again. Get all the water out of it. So I like to just use a leaf blower, and you can use compressed air like from your air compressor. You can use a leaf blower. You can use one of those fancy Master Blaster like specific car dryers. But just use some kind of compressed air to blow as much water out of the engine bay as possible. Once that's done, there's one more step that we can do to dry this off, and I like to actually start the engine up. And I like to, sometimes I even like to bring it up to operating temp, and 2 reasons. The heat will dry up any more remaining water or condensation in there. The other reason is that the vibrations from the engine will shake any standing water out of, that might be pooled up in different spots that you can't reach. So between that and compressed air, you're going to be able to get this pretty darn dry if you use these 2 tactics together. And as you can see, we have no check engine lights. Of course, we do still have the TPMS light on this truck because I don't have any sensors in these wheels. But aside from that, there's no check engine light. The engine runs perfectly fine. It's like nothing ever happened. And as long as you kind of stick to these guidelines, you shouldn't have any problems either. Just use your head, use common sense, and it's totally okay to wash your engine bay and even pressure wash it if you have to. So then the last sort of icing on the cake when it comes to polishing this turd of an engine bay is to just spray a water-based dressing on here. This is just a tire dressing. This is Poor Boy's Bold and Bright. It's a water-based product. It's a good idea to use a water-based product if you can. One of the reasons is because you can spray this on while your engine bay is still wet if you haven't dried it off all the way, and it'll kind of dry along with the water. It'll mix together. It won't act weird. The main reason, though, is that water-based products typically don't attract dirt and dust. And so The last thing you want to do is spray a bunch of Armor All or something on there and make it really sticky, because then as soon as you drive it in any kind of dusty conditions, your engine bay is just going to get even dirtier than it was before because it's attracting dirt and dust. So a water-based product is a good way to go. I just spray it on the whole thing and let it chill for a little while, maybe even up to an hour, and then I'll come back and take another look at it. And if there's some blotchy spots or some streaks, I can just wipe it down with a microfiber towel. Well, here's the end result, folks. And I think a lot of people that maybe have less of a trained eye are going to look at this and say, you know, it looks pretty good. It's pretty clean. The stuff that really jumps out at you, like the black plastics and stuff, and they of course came out good, but the walls of the engine bay, the firewall, the inner fenders, this rad support, that undercoating, it's just not going anywhere. So in my opinion, I would say that this one was just too far gone with all the undercoating issues. Just not worth the time to really try and make it perfect. I truly believe, had this truck never seen a winter, if this was a southern vehicle and it was as dirty as the starting point was, I would have been able to get an amazing result. But it's just this undercoating was too big of a beast to tackle, unfortunately, today. But overall, we do have a cleaner engine bay, and everything is still running and functioning perfectly fine. So I guess in some ways you can consider that a success. It looks a little bit better in here now when we do go to sell it. It's a great way to improve the value of your vehicle. If you are going to be selling it, you want to impress people. As soon as they pop the hood, one of the first things that they notice is, oh wow, this engine looks really good. It's nice and clean and tidy in here. That's a great way to make people think that your vehicle has been cared for and it's been maintained. So I think it's totally worth doing, and I do feel like it has improved the overall condition of this Tacoma when we go to get rid of it now. Anyways, you can't win them all, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you got something from it, if nothing more than just that you don't have to be a wimp. Don't be afraid of pressure washing your engine bay. Just be smart. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.